Perfect. Okay, good evening, Galia.
Good evening.
We are here with Galia, and this our first interview with BMed Global, announcing this course, this training about mindfulness and psychedelics. And Galia is going to be our teacher. And the first thing, I like you to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your training, your background with both psychedelics and meditation and mindfulness.
Okay, so thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me. I'm very excited to do this course. I've started my path when I was 20, and I started it in India and Nepal. I met the Buddhist teachings in a very traditional context, and I fell in love actually immediately. I was after a turbulent adolescence with struggling with depression and different kind of life questions, as many adolescents are going through. And I found in Buddhism kind of a way out, a real promise for a total change of perspective and like a radical way to live my life. So for the first few years between the age of 20 and 26, I was a very strict Buddhist. I didn't even drink a glass of wine. I took the teachings really seriously. I've spent long durations of time. So I did like a 4-month retreat on silence in a very traditional meditation center in the Burmese tradition. And I really kind of dived deep into this way of mind-altering practices and really kind of expanded my way of getting to know my own body and mind, and through these Dharma teachings, liberate myself from many of the patterns and many of the things that have been bothering me and kind of caging me within my own personal path. And then when I was 26, almost 27, I already started to study in the university. I've started a multidisciplinary path that led me to study psychology. And I was just about to start my clinical master's degree in clinical psychology when all of a sudden appeared in my life this new calling in the form of ayahuasca ceremony. Actually, the first time I drank ayahuasca was the same day I landed back from another 3-month trip to India. And the two of my friends have decided to do an ayahuasca ceremony for their marriage, and they invited me. And I landed in the place where this ceremony took place. And immediately, like few hours after I've landed from India, I was already in this new ceremony. And I really felt that after almost 7 years of not consuming any mind-altering substances, a new chapter in my life have started, literally. And I really felt like I'm living one cycle of spiritual growth, and I'm entering into a whole new dimension of spiritual growth that I never could imagine existed when I was doing my Buddhist practice. I remember actually throughout this first night that I was drinking ayahuasca, I was constantly thinking to myself, Jesus, how people are doing that without the preparation I've had. And how are they able to take this intensity, and how are they able to integrate this and to even survive it in a way without the kind of knowledge and proficiency that I've had in just spending time with my own mind and body. So this was actually the opening of a very fascinating and long way that I'm 41 now, so it already is lasting for 14 years. This first step and the first years, I've worked a lot with ayahuasca, mostly through the Santo Daime teachings. So it's a syncretist way of working with ayahuasca that combines influences from Christianity and Umbanda and a lot of like forest Amazonian kind of local traditions. And I've had the real privilege to be exposed to this with amazing teachers and kind of really learn and deepen in my way with the Santo Daime and learn this kind of work that also integrates in a very interesting way a lot of meditation within the ceremonies themselves, a lot of emphasis on group work, on discipline of the mind and body through the work with the substances. But this also was also just my first step in the world of psychedelics, because from there things have started to open more and more, and I have found my way to the work with the mushrooms, which I would say that now are my main psychedelics allies. I've started to work deeply with psilocybin mushrooms. I've started to explore in less authoritarian contexts, so psytrance festivals and working with friends in nature, doing a lot of work within my own home with my partner, who is also a long-time psychonaut. So really kind of carving and building our own way, our own ceremonies, receiving our own songs, learning how to work with these medicines, extracting and growing and kind of touching these things, not through consuming them from another place, but really through cultivating and finding the way to make them into our own spiritual practice and into my spiritual practice. And in the first few years, actually, I had a lot of conflicts. It took me a long time to take this two so quote unquote contradicting ways, that one way is saying, no, it's even forbidden to think of consuming these substances. And it took a long while, I would say about 7 years of deep molding in these things together, until I really reached the point where I felt, okay, for me now there is no more contradictions. And even the contradictions that exist, they are just enriching each of the ways. And so I'm really excited to offer this course, because I feel it's like a beautiful fruit, or like a culmination of many of the things that I've been exploring and inquiring in my own path, my personal path.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I thought the saying that you said about when your mind is not trained to in the meditation to observe itself, the psychedelic experience could be overwhelming. So you found it the basis to reach this new point in the meditation. For me, it's also like another level for meditation. Do you feel like this?
I feel I totally feel that there is a very deep reciprocity between these two very different and distinct ways of reaching altered states. And I think this is the beauty in this tension between this disciplined and kind of solitary way of the meditations offer us a very gradual and arduous way. It takes a lot of effort, and you're doing it by yourself. And I think this is very, very beneficial and helpful when you dive into the psychedelic realm. But I have to say, I constantly see the other thing happens just as well. So the opening into the psychedelic realms, the way that psychedelics are kind of revealing the real potential of the human consciousness and body to the person, I constantly see how when the same person is coming back into his personal meditation practice without any substances, something profoundly is moved and changed by these things. And I think this is why we see so much interlap and interconnectedness between these two communities. This is why so much of the psychedelic community is really interested in meditation and in mind-altering practices that are not involving substances. And a lot of the practitioners, even though they're doing it sometimes silently and they're, concealing it because maybe it's not considered as legitimate as it is in the other community, but I do see a lot of interest in the Buddhist community with Buddhist teachers and Buddhist practitioners that are looking for these allies, these non-human beings that will support them and kind of push them to open more and to reveal more within their own personal practice completely. I totally see this.
Yeah.
Mutual.
Yeah. This course about psychedelics and meditation is called, let me remember, something about
working miracles.
Working miracles. I wanted to ask you particularly about this word you using. That sounds a little mystical. I don't know if it is from a psychology scientific point of view, What words about miracle? What sense do you want to give to this word?
So I think both words in this are really, really important, because the first word is working. Mm-hmm. And I want to put the emphasis on the working, because I think, and I will speak about miracles in a second, but I think most of all this course tries to offer a new perspective on how we can incorporate psychedelic practices into our lives and how we can do this work. I mean, I come from the Daime, so the word for a ceremony in the Santo Daime is work, trabalho, in Portuguese. And I really am very deeply connected to this concept of the psychedelic endeavor, the psychedelic journey as a way of working towards different means, working towards different abilities, cultivating things. And I think that when we start to think about this in this way, the miracles change their sense. And instead of searching for miracles in the kind of magical, and I want to have superpowers and so on, I have in my mind, when I say this word, a very beautiful quote by Thich Nhat Hanh, which is a great Buddhist master that passed away recently. And he's a beautiful influence and inspiration for my heart. And he was saying that the real miracle is not to walk on water, but the real miracle is to walk on the ground of this earth mindfully every moment. Mm. And I think that this is the essence of why I've called this course Working Miracles, because what I would like to offer in this course, and this is a very experiential and personal endeavor and journey, I would like to offer people a perspective that will help them to make friends with these allies, these non-human beings, these plants, these mushrooms, these substances, these molecules, and to make this alliance into something that transforms every breath, every step into a miracle. This is what I think about when I say a miracle, because for me as a long-term practitioner, for example, when a person starts to practice, many times they would sit and they would say, wow, it's so boring, you know, to look at my breath, there is nothing there. And it's like, what am I doing here, right? And then through this integration of these two beautiful ways, after a year, after some ceremonies, after we contextualize this work and we take the inspiration and the help and the aid of this non-human beings, suddenly we sit with our breath and it's like, wow, the breath. It's so miraculous. It's so interesting. It's so rich. Think about like a point in the session with whatever substance it was that you were sitting and like your breath was like the most amazing, beautiful thing. This is the miracle that I want us to perform together in this group. And this is the miracles that I really think worth working hard for, you know, because the miracles of like power and influence and, you know, reading minds and seeing the futures, I'm personally less enthused about this kind of miracles. But when I come to the miracles of loving your children, loving your partner, forgiving yourself, being whole, feeling whole, you know, this is such a radical thing in our modern world, just to be content and just to be filled with joy, filled with, you know, calmness and tranquility. These are the miracles I would like to try to perform with the participants in this course.
And being in the present, that this is the other miracle that we are giving away, yeah, with all the distractions and all the stress and all of our thoughts, that we are forgetting. This is something with the psychedelics you learn very, very rapidly, yeah, that this only moment, the moment we are living right now, you and me, this is the only moment we can really enjoy, because we were the only existent moment, yeah?
Completely. And I think this has to do deeply with this idea of a miracle, because sometimes it feels in our day-to-day life that it's like it takes a miracle to bring us back to the present, right? With all these powers and all these influences that constantly are trying to rob our attention and kind of put us in a war against our body, against our hearts, against our minds. And I think this is really very essential. And I would definitely think that this is one of the places where these two practices totally converge, because in a real peak of a psychedelic experience, you are in the here and the now. You are, even if you are traveling in another dimension, there is something that is so much connected to what is, and so much filled with this ability to be present. And I think it's really, really crucial. And we will definitely touch on how to use this, or how to make the best integration, so that this would keep going with you in your daily life, not just when you eat mushrooms, or just when you drink ayahuasca, or just when you even smoke cannabis, you know, because I think that many of the times when people are going to substances, they make this binary or dualistic division. Oh yeah, when I'm with the medicine, that's and that's and that. And this is part of what I want to so much work on in this course, saying that the medicine is not just a material thing that you're consuming. It's not that. We shouldn't be having this consumerist approach towards this non-human allies. We need to start working with them in a way that keeps them alive, or they continue to accompany us even when we do not ingest them, you know. And I think it's a lot about that.
Do the people that wants to join this course to have an experience in any of these two fields, like psychedelics and meditation, or they could be like virgin in both?
I would say that if you have experience in any of the two, you would find a lot of things that are familiar to you, that you already understand what I'm talking about, because I relate to these states in different ways. But I also think it's a good introduction for people who want to start on this path in a way, who wants to explore, who wants to get familiar with this integration between these two great ways. And they want to have kind of the right mindset or the right perspective on how to start. What is creating a ceremony? What is altered states in general? What is mindfulness? So I would say that each one of the people that would join would get from this course, you know, in related to where he started from. And if you have a lot of experience in both fields, I think you would relate to many of the things that I'm saying, or many of the suggestions that I will suggest for practice, from a place that already explored it and already know this in a way, but get a new kind of scheme or a new order to look at that in a different way. And if you're absolutely novice and new to that, it would be like a great first step on how to make this exploration in the safest and in the most like beneficial maybe way. This is what I would hope it would help people to do.
Okay, the course is starting on February. It's gonna last, I think, 6 sessions. But before this, you are doing this webinar, free webinar, that is gonna be 11th of January. We are setting the date yet, and it's about psychedelic as a medical practice. Is that right?
As a spiritual practice.
As a spiritual, sorry, not medical, spiritual. I'm with the medical because I'm involved in all of this medicalization of psychedelics. As a spiritual practice. Tell me a little bit about this.
Maybe we can even call it psychedelics not as a medical practice, you know.
Thank you. That's nice.
See, I have a PhD in psychology, and I've been working for many years now, first as a therapist and then as a supervisor and a teacher. I come with from a very close, you know, experience with the psychiatric and psychological mainstream systems. So what I'm saying is not based on some kind of new age, not wanting to get closer to psychiatry or psychology, but quite the contrary. It's coming from a very deep understanding of how these systems function. What are the guidelines? What are their principles? What are like the philosophy that is coming, that is based, that these two practices are based on? And I think that we are actually facing a huge challenge now in the psychedelic community, because medicalization is trying to monopolize the use of psychedelics. And this is a real problem for me. It's not only trying to monopolize through the very explicit means of like writing a patent on psilocybin. This is a very brutal and evident step that this industry, the pharmaceutical industry, is taking. But I think there is a lot of war on consciousness right now through public relations and media campaigns and different ways of trying to create what my good friend Ido Hartogzon, which published a very important book called American Trip. And this is a book about cultural set and setting, and how cultural set and setting is actually creating the perspective through which you are grasping these substances, and it is affecting what will happen in your trip. And I think there is a huge effort now and a lot of money that is being spent on trying to sell psychedelics as psychiatric medications. And I think personally, coming from so many years in the psychiatric system, coming from so many years of working with clients and therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, that this is a huge mistake. Because the foundation, the philosophical foundation of this system is inadequate and is not the right mind frame to incorporate the work with altered states. And psychiatrists and psychologists, by their training and socialization, I would say that I think they are the least appropriate people in our society to accompany this mind-altering experiences, actually. And I would think that things that we are seeing now, for example, in the United States, in countries that are working on legalization and decriminalization of the substances and are offering something that is called supported adult consumption, which is non-hierarchical, which is dealing with the problem of suggestibility under psychedelics. You know, when I am, as a medical doctor, telling you that what you have is a disease, is a biological disease, and I'm going to give you a molecule that will cure you, I'm creating a suggestion. I'm convincing you in an idea that I'm having. And if I'm using psychedelics to enforce this idea, which we already know in most of the psychiatric problems, this idea does not function. And biological psychiatry is facing the biggest crisis it have faced in the last 20 years, and now it have reached a very, very severe state of a very, very extreme crisis, in which people are saying, you know, the biological model of suffering, of mental suffering, is not working. And then suddenly psychedelics appeared to save this model, and people are saying, okay, I will give you what? Ketamine. Ketamine is not a psychedelic drug, it's the dissociative drug. And I personally think that this promise that ketamine would cure you from depression is as dangerous as saying that opiates will cure you from your chronic pain. And I personally have a lot of concerns that this is what we're going to see in 5 years with the X-ketamine. And all of this for me has to do with non-scientific way of thinking, because real scientists would say, okay, we have hundreds of thousands of people using ketamine. It's illegal, but they're using it. They're still depressed, they're addicted, and they have harmful results of that. I would not ignore this data just because it doesn't fit what I want to sell. I would take in this data, and so this course is aimed to say, and this webinar is aimed to say, okay, if we don't want to choose the medical models, if we are living, for example, like me, in privileged countries like Spain, where any personal use of any substance is perfectly legal, you know, because I'm a sovereign adult and I can choose how to alter my mind. I want to explore this human consciousness. So what cultural set and setting can I construct, first of all, for myself, and then maybe in the circle, in the community with which I'm doing this. This will be a great emphasis of this webinar on community building, on not doing these things alone, of finding, you know, spiritual friends. But I would like to offer, just as another alternative, the concept that psychedelics could be a spiritual practice, and we could see them through this lens. We could construct our use of this beautiful non-human allies. We can construct our way of meeting these non-human allies, just as we construct the way we meet spiritual teachers. We can take the lessons that we have learned through this meeting with this into our spiritual practice and kind of implement it in our day-to-day lives. And so we could really get ourselves out, or we can uproot from our mind this media campaign that says, oh, it's a cure for, it's a psychiatric medication for, you have a problem because you are anxious, so you need to solve it, or you need to be more productive. And instead of that, opening a new space for community building, for really setting up a way that says, okay, maybe I'll use it once, and maybe I'll use it once in a month, and maybe, you know, each one of us has a different need for spiritual practice, has a different way of spiritual practice. So this would be, in a few words, the topic of this webinar.
Yeah. You have used many times two words that I think are really important in this. One is community. Why is important to have like a tribe, a community, some people to share? I think is a need for humans. We live in cities, we live isolated. The concept of community is dissolving so fast. And the other is spiritual. Spiritual, I want to put light on this word, because really I'm trying to write something about why ayahuasca, for instance, works. And it's not because of the imao, and it's not because the DMT. Is something to do with the spiritual level. So it cures in a level that medicine, regular medicine, the hospital never could reach, not psychiatry, as you said. So what's about spiritual after so many years of meditation, ceremonies, use of psychedelics? How can we define from a not logical, but from an understandable point of view, what the spiritual is?
So I think just like with many words, words are difficult, and many people in our community, in our society, when they hear this word spiritual, they run away, because what the image they have in their mind is like this white wearing, you know, bullshit stalking, new age, incense lighting people, right? And this is very important for me, because I can resonate with this with the sentiment of feeling this fear, or feeling this not wanting to go this direction. And this is why I want to invite everyone who's listening now to this thing to reclaim this dimension of ourselves, because spiritual does not mean something that is strange, or that is, you know, mystical in a way that we don't have access to. I come from a spiritual practice, so the Buddhism is my first spiritual practice, that emphasized the way we speak, the work we do in our life, what is our livelihood, right? Emphasize which actions we choose to act. And I think that when I speak about spirituality, I speak about this dimension of being a human being that is outside of the material consumerist position to which we are being pushed constantly by our modern society and capitalism, that says to us, your value, your worth, your happiness is all dependent on how you look, how much you weigh, what do you have, how many likes you have in your Instagram account, how much money you have. And this, I think, is a prison that makes people extremely miserable. Because when there is this dimension that is being cut out of our life, and I meet it all the time. People come to me depressed and anxious and lonely and isolated and hate themselves, and they are so afraid of spirituality. Yeah, but spirituality is exactly this thing, is exactly this inner sense that has the potential that each of and every one of us has as a human being, to feel at home within our mind and body, to feel interconnected to whatever it is around us, to have a deep sense of meaning and a sense of fulfillment that we're doing what is important for us. You know, I think this is spirituality for me, this dimension that is beyond what I crave and how much I get and how much I don't like. And there is a dimension that I think each and every one of us, if we just close our eyes for a moment and we listen to the yearning of our heart, we listen to what really is there that we need, we are thirsty for, I think this is the call for spirituality in our world. And I think that the more we are letting ourselves, come to this with a clean mind and with a very down-to-earth approach, which is my approach basically, and saying, okay, spirituality is how I hug my child. How much do I hug my child? Spirituality is how much am I able to be present and compassionate when I'm in pain, when somebody I love is sick. How much am I willing to meet with this basic truths of life, which is impermanence, and suffering and this changing phenomena, and how much I have the capacity to grow from it and to kind of get to know my real potential. And for this, I just want to add a little kind of mark that says community is necessary. Community and relationships and inspirations and teachers. And for this, I think to do this journey, I think it's essential to kind of acknowledge the fact that we are interdependent and we are interconnected, and that this journey becomes even possible when we are allowing ourselves to come into these relationships, whether it's with human teachers or friends, spiritual friends, or non-human teachers. And I think these two things are very deeply connected to each other.
Because it's about connection. You say connection with nature, connection with the others. Spirituality is also this. It's not being ourselves isolated.
Completely, exactly, 100%. It's not about, again, gaining something and achieving something, again, like the medical model of psychedelics is trying to sell to us, that we will be getting from that the thing that we want, and we will become better in the sense that we think of what better means. This is not how psychedelics works. When people are coming to do ceremonies, or when they're asking me for advice whether they should do ceremonies, I always tell them, it may be the worst couple of hours in your life. You have to be prepared to this. This may be the most difficult experience that you've ever had in your entire life. So frightening, so difficult, so painful. But what you will gain out of it depends on how you will integrate it and how much you will agree to have this as a learning process. Just like that, when you go to a self-retreat or silent retreat and you're sitting with yourself day in and day out for 8 hours a day meditating, it gets very difficult. And people are not saying, oh, it's difficult, so I'm doing something wrong. No, just keep carrying psychedelics. I think that something about this, media attack that says psychedelics will do this to you and you will experience this, and you're trying to be, there is a suggestibility that is working in you to create a certain image. And then when it doesn't work, people are really cracking, and people have crises and they don't understand, and they feel that they've been cheated because it wasn't miraculously solving all their problems in just one session.
It's about expectations.
A lot.
And mind frame also. It's a lot to say. It's a lot to learn. It's a lot to talk. I think it's gonna be a really, really interesting course. I'm so glad that you are opening, Joel and you, and are opening this new epoch in BMed Global. So thanks a lot. See you on 11. We will confirm this date, but it should be 10, 11, 12. We don't know yet, but we will inform. So see you around. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you, Inaki.
And welcome to BMed Global.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.